An anthology on the bad, the short-lived, and the forgotten shows and events in television history. You are listening to It Was a Thing on TV.
On this week's Super Train Mystery, Hail to the Chief. Two dwarfs and a magician replace a presidential candidate with a double so real, even his wife can't tell.
Episode number 520. Submission number 392. Flow! You guys actually chose Flow. Dang it. Flow aired on CBS from March 24th of 1980 to June 30th of 1981 for 29 episodes over 2 seasons.
Rowdy redhead heading for the big time, looking like a Texas sequin star, making eyes at every tight jeaned cowboy, sassing good old boys around the bar. Flo's yellow rose, flashing neon every trucker knows. The door is always open and the beer is always cold. It flows, yellow rose, flows, yellow rose.
The people have spoken. And actually, a little behind the curtains stuff here. We actually had a tie between Mega Man, the animated series, and Flow, and Chico, being the consummate gentleman he is, conceded to Flow for this vote. But don't worry, we're going to cover Mega Man, the animated series, and Greg, his choice of Work It. We'll cover that also later in 2025.
What voted for that? You could have voted for yourself, Greg. I mean, come on.
Oh, yeah, all the candidates do that. Even though I didn't vote for mine.
I didn't vote for mine. I have integrity, damn it. I'm not going to vote for my own choice. I'm not going to be the one person who votes for my own choice. I do a freaking wrestling podcast where the people have to vote for the show. That means Scott Crisco will have to watch each month on Place to Be Nation, and I don't vote for my own choices because I have integrity.
And we love you for it, Greg.
First time in 520 episodes I've ever heard this podcast and integrity in the same sentence.
What are you talking about, Mike? A lot of people come to this podcast for integrity. I mean, come on. Look at all the freaking people we have on this show all the time. We have Alan Thicke. We have the ghost of Johnny Olson. We have Susan St. James. Isn't that right, Susan?
Uh-oh.
Whammy, I need to talk to you for a second.
Happy holidays, Greg!
Yeah. Hey, Whammy, I got a question. You're going to be high... I got a question, Whammy.
Yeah, I'm going to be high. You're absolutely right. I'm going to be high. I'm a little high right now, my friend.
Well, you're high off that Christmas episode, Whammy.
No, I'm not high for that reason.
Okay, well, I got to say, are you going to be getting the hottest Christmas gift of 1981? And I'm talking about Casey Munchkin on the Odyssey 2?
Oh, I had that back in the day, yes. I think actually we offered that back in 1983, and I stole that from somebody. You know, Odyssey 2s were really cheap in 1983.
Oh, yeah, you could have bought them at the frickin' KB Toys for like $20 on clearance.
$5, baby. I had a whole trunk of them in my car.
All right, get out of here, Whammy. We got to talk about Flow. Kiss my grits.
Well, you kiss my ass too, asshole. He didn't mean it that way, Whammy. Calm down. Why'd you just show Greg your naked posterior?
Your naked red ass, Whammy. I didn't need to see that. Chico didn't need to see that. Thank God this is an audio podcast and nobody can see it.
Thank God Mike saw his front side.
I've seen worse.
So great. After that random nudity by the Whammy, I gotta keep you away from whatever you're high on. We're here to talk about Flow. Trust me, we're here to talk about Flow. So, if you go back to the 70s, Alice was reasonably popular. I wouldn't say it was top of the ratings popular, but it was popular enough to run for 9 seasons, from 1976 to 1985 on television. Admittedly, it had a little help along the way because it also aired alongside the Jeffersons, and for a while, I do believe it aired on the same night as the Carol Burnett Show and also All in the Family. So it had help to raise those ratings. But it was still popular enough in 1980 to justify a spinoff. And probably the most popular character on the show, the one who I think everybody would be like, yeah, she's getting the spinoff show, a waitress named Flo. She got her own show and moved away from Phoenix, where Mel's Diner and Alice was set. And in case you don't know, Flo, she was popular, I think, for one thing and one thing only. She had a catchphrase that I think swept the world, or at least swept the United States, in the late 70s. And Greg, I think he just articulated it beautifully when he told the Whammy to get out of here. And that phrase was,
"Kiss my grits."
Not necessarily that high, but yeah, kiss my grits. As I mentioned earlier, Flo moved away from Phoenix, left Mel's Diner, and actually went to her hometown of Cowtown, Texas. Which, in case you don't know, Cowtown is a nickname for Fort Worth. So I'm guessing this is inspired by that nickname, but it is totally fictitious. And when she was visiting her family in Cowtown, she bought a rundown roadhouse. And I always want to put Peter Griffin in here saying, Roadhouse.
Roadhouse.
So she bought this roadhouse and renamed it Flo's Yellow Rose. And actually, Flo's Yellow Rose is the name of the theme song that you heard earlier, performed by Hoyt Axton. Flo now has gone from waitress at this diner to the owner of this roadhouse. And the series gets into her struggles with different staff members, like a very chauvinistic bartender named Earl and an obnoxious banker named Farley. Hey, aren't they all obnoxious? Just saying, folks. And also gets into conflict with her mother named Velma and her sister Fran. The staff at the Yellow Rose includes her best friend from her childhood named Miriam as the waitress / bookkeeper of the establishment, and then a piano player named Les. Next door to this roadhouse, there's a garage, and one of the mechanics at the garage, who was a regular customer at this roadhouse, was named Randy. So it's just an extension of the Alice brand, but just in a different setting, in a different place, but still in the restaurant / diner / roadhouse business. In terms of the personnel on Flo, we'll start off with Flo herself, Flo Castleberry, portrayed by the same person who portrayed Flo on Alice, Holly Holiday. And to be honest, I think the only thing that we can really associate Holly Holiday with is portraying Flo. I'm not saying it made her career like it made Tony Shalhoub's career, but it pretty much made her career. I said Tony Shalhoub.
Yeah, it was 220 episodes ago now.
220 episodes since what?
Since I mentioned for the first time ever on the podcast, I loved Wings.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, can you believe how much time has flied? Can you believe it was 300 episodes that I never mentioned that I loved Wings?
Nope. You go back to those first 299 episodes, you won't hear a darn thing about Wings. I don't even think Wings existed at that point.
To us, no. Till I found the realization that it made Tony Shalhoub's career.
And it did. Who cares about Monk? Who cares about the marvelous Mrs. Maisel? It's all about the Wings around here.
Yeah, because I love Wings.
Oh, do tell.
I love Wings so much.
It's where we learned that Crystal Bernard wanted to see Rent.
I want to see Rent.
I learned about that blimp, but I'm just saying. Playing Earl Tucker, who is the chauvinistic bartender I mentioned earlier, is Jeffrey Lewis. Jeffrey Lewis, he's been in a lot of stuff. He's not with us any longer. He passed away almost 10 years ago, but he was in Every Which Way But Loose. Oh, a classic movie. Hey, Every Which Way But Loose. That starred the chimpanzee that played Mr. Smith.
Yes, Clint Eastwood worked with Mr. Smith. The director of Juror Number 2 worked with Mr. Smith.
I'm sorry, I'm more impressed that Jeffrey Lewis worked with Mr. Smith, not that Clint Eastwood worked with Mr. Smith. Actually, I'm kind of surprised that we didn't say that Jeffrey Lewis worked with Clint Eastwood. We're all going to Mr. Smith here. Playing Farley Waters, that obnoxious banker that we talked about earlier, is Jim Baker. Not that Jim Baker. Boy, that would be kind of weird if it was that Jim Baker. We're talking about the Jim Baker who, well, if you look at IMDb, known for Flow. So, yeah, that Jim Baker, known for Flow. He was also on an episode of Simon and Simon, and also on an episode of Dukes of Hazzard and Open All Night, Open All Night, Open All Night, Open All Night. There's a character named Randy Stumphill. That's the mechanic I mentioned earlier. And he's played by Leo Burmester. Randy Stumphill was his full name. Leo Burmester hasn't been with us for close to 18 years. He was on a little bit of everything. He was in the movie The Abyss. He was on 3 episodes of Law and Order. But he's been on many other movies, TV shows. He's got over 70 listings on IMDb. Next, playing Les Kincaid, and we haven't even talked about a Les Kincaid yet in regards to this show, is Stephen Keep Mills. Stephen Keep Mills, again, IMDb, known for Flow. That's his career. Now, he's done more than that, but that's like the big thing in his career. He was on an episode of Quantum Leap, looks like final season of OG Quantum Leap. He did 2 episodes of Spencer for Hire, 2 episodes of Simon and Simon. So he kept busy, it seems, back in the 80s. Playing Mama Velma Castleberry, so playing Flo's mother, is Sudie Bond. Sudie Bond, she did not live much longer after Flo. She passed away in 1984. Again, another person who did a little bit of everything over the course of her career. She was in Love Story. She was in Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, Jimmy Dean. She was in Johnny Dangerously. That's actually her last credit, Johnny Dangerously. But other than that, she was frequently seen on movies and TV shows in the 70s and early 80s, including, and this may be coming up very soon on MeTV as we're recording this, she was on a 1977 episode of Barnaby Jones.
A Quint Martin production.
Oh, wait, I think they're actually in 1978 now, so she must have been on an episode of Barnaby Jones within the last couple of weeks. 2 more people we're going to talk about, and actually 2 more popular names that we've talked about in the past. Playing the sister Fran Castleberry is Lucy Lee Flippin, and that name we definitely have talked about in the past. We talked about her on Erie, Indiana, among other things, and The Munsters Today. And we actually talked about her on an episode of The Ropers. I remember that now that we say that. So again, somebody who has a very diverse career that we've talked about a couple of times. Lastly, playing Miriam Willoughby, the childhood best friend of Flo, and we just mentioned her last week, I believe, Joyce Bulifant. Where to start with her? She has had such a long and illustrious career. We could talk about all her appearances on different TV shows, Match Game, and I know she appeared on, I believe, the final episode of Chain Reaction, OG Chain Reaction in 1980. She's definitely made the rounds. And actually, I don't know if you guys heard this. If anybody did, it would be Chico. But she did an episode of J. Keith Van Stratton's Go Fact Yourself about 6 months ago at the Game Show Expo in California. That was a very entertaining episode.
Go Fact Yourself. Very entertaining podcast. J. Keith Van Stratton and Helen Hogg put out a quality product. And Joyce Bulifant. It's always good to hear Joyce Bulifant, let me tell you.
And in no way did J. Keith Van Stratton or Helen Hong pay for that advertisement. That's just true love from us. It was a really good podcast and is a good podcast. Go listen to it after you listen to us. Just saying. We love you, J. Keith, but we don't love you that much. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, her career goes way back. It goes all the way back, believe it or not, to 1959. I did not know it went back that far. And she's still active. Like I said, she did this podcast with J. Keith Van Stratton about 6 months ago. So those are the regulars. Those are the people who are on most of the shows, at least 20 of the 29 episodes. There's a couple of other people who show up on a handful of episodes. We'll go through the important ones as we go through the episodes, starting off with episode 1 of season 1, which is titled Homecoming. On her way to a new job in Houston, Flo stops off in her hometown, Cowtown, Texas, and ends up buying an old roadhouse. Oh, this is just setting the entire plot that we spent the first, 5 minutes of the show going over. We do have a couple of names on this episode. Playing Leon is James Cromwell, best known, in my opinion, for Babe. But he's done so much stuff. We've talked about him numerous times. I remember we've talked about him on season 2 through the end of the series, I think season 4 of The Detour. But he's done so much stuff. He was in Hot L Baltimore. We talked about him there. Just an absolute legend.
The Last Precinct we talked about him in.
That's another one, yes.
Are we just going to discount that he is Zephram Cochrane?
Oh, yeah, the guy that invented warp drive on Star Trek. Yep.
Another name in this episode, and this person was actually in 9 episodes playing Chester, somebody that I don't know if he'll be Hall of Fame, but given how many times we've talked about this guy, he's got to be up there somewhere. He's got to be in consideration. Mickey Jones. We talked about Mickey Jones on the pilot to Misfits of Science. We talked about Mickey Jones on H. Crawford Private Eye. I've talked about where I saw Mickey Jones, which was the second part of a 2-part Married with Children, where they go down to spring break and he's an auto shop owner. But also, and we've mentioned this a number of times in the past, he was on the season 9 It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia episode Gun Fever 2, Still Hot. And he played Gunther, the gun dealer. Just one of those character actors that once you see him, you can't unsee him. He has such a unique personality. And unfortunately, he hasn't been with us now for going on 7 years. He passed away in February of 2018. That will take us to episode 2, which is titled Showdown at the Yellow Rose. Earl must fight a man who's come to get even for having his girlfriend stolen 17 years ago. I'm guessing the guy who's going for the revenge is this guy, a character named Bad Joe Shaw. Just call it a hunch, but a guy whose name involves the word bad, he must be fighting Earl for this girlfriend from 17 years ago. Bad Joe Shaw, played by Ben Davidson. Not John Davidson, Ben Davidson. I was really hoping you'd be like, Ben Davidson. No, don't need that, Shadow. Thank you so much.
When you said bend, I thought you were going to be saying bend.
No, Ben. Ben.
I know,
Ben.
but it sounded like you said bend. Like freaking.
No, we don't talk about Uri Geller in these parts.
Yeah, that fucking fraud.
And actually, taking a look at his IMDb, this Ben Davidson character, yeah, he's a bad man that I wouldn't want to mess with because he played in the NFL for a decade. He played for the Packers, the Redskins, and the Oakland Raiders. But also, he was 6'8". That's not a guy I'd like to run into in a dark alley.
And keep in mind, Mike's a tall guy.
I'm not 6'8" by any means, but no, I'm not messing with him. He looks like a very bad man, even though he's been deceased for 12 and a half years at this point. But we have not necessarily talked about him in the past, but we talked about shows he's been on, because he was on an episode of Delta House, and he was on an episode of Flying High. Episode 3 is titled Happy Birthday, Mama. Mama's surprise party turns into a smashing success when an old beau of Mama's shows up, thanks to Flo. Episode 4 is titled Take My Sister, Please. When Flo's prim and proper sister leaves her job at the Department of Motor Vehicles, Flo hires her to work at the bar, and it proves to be a big mistake. James Cromwell is back in this episode as Leon. But nobody else of note, so we're going to move on to episode number 5, which is titled The Hero of Flo's Yellow Rose. Les is a hero, but his background is a puzzle to Flo and everyone at the Yellow Rose. We have a name on this episode. This person, this must have been really early in this person's career. Playing Webb in this episode is Robert Englund. So this is a good 4 years before Freddy Krueger was a thing. And yeah, it was early in his career, but by no means was it like early in his career. IMDb has his career going as far back as 1974. But yeah, Freddy Krueger was on this episode, or the person who portrays Freddy Krueger. That's going to take us to episode 6, which is titled The Reunion. Flo's high school beau returns to Cowtown and makes an offer to travel the world and have fun. Sound very tempting. But yeah, who doesn't want to travel around the world and have fun? That's 6 episodes, and believe it or not, that is the end of season 1. Now, obviously, Flo did well enough to justify a second season, but if you go a little bit deeper in terms of the ratings, Flo did spectacularly well. It aired on Monday nights at 9:30 p.m. And this is a pretty stacked lineup. There's one little hole in the lineup, but as a whole, this Monday night is pretty darn good. You had WKRP in Cincinnati at 8, then the Stockard Channing Show at 8:30. There's the weak link in this entire night. MASH was at 9, and then Flo was at 9:30, and Lou Grant was at 10. So you had 5 really good shows there, at least in the 1979-1980 season. And Flo actually ranked 7th for the season, even though it only aired for 6 episodes. That sort of fits the bill as to what we talked about with the Ropers and Angie, all big in that first season. And I think they all started in 1979-1980, and none of them got out of 1980-81. So you had 3 really big shows that debuted in early to mid 1980 that didn't make it past 1981. A little edit. We know that the Ropers started in 79 and did not get out of 80. Little mistake on the fly there. In terms of the competition on NBC, would have been the second half hour of a 2-hour Monday night movie. And then on ABC, and I think this was the final season of this show, it went up against the second half hour of Family. And indeed, that was the end of Family. It ended in 1980. Obviously, Flo is riding really high. Great ratings, great time slot. It got renewed for a second season. But sadly, like a number of shows we talked about in the past, it couldn't get out of the second season alive. We'll get into why it didn't get out of the second season a little bit later. But for now, we're going to start talking about the season 2 episodes, since we have 23 of them. And we're going to start with episode 1, titled The Enemy Below. A skunk has stationed himself under the yellow rose and threatens to put Flo out of business, both professionally and socially. I'm sorry, guys. Bad pun coming up. That stinks. Y'all knew I was going to say it, but the thing is, both professionally and socially, I think the skunk may have gotten a little bit of revenge on Flo if she's been put out of business socially. Just saying. Mickey Jones returns in this episode as Chester, but playing Bob, this is somebody we've talked about. Bob Hastings. We would know him in these parts. He hosted the first season of Dealer's Choice back in the early 70s. But he has done so much more than just hosting that first season of Dealer's Choice. He did so much stuff over the years, from Harper Valley PTA, the movie, the 1978 movie, to cartoon voices, to many different roles on different TV shows, Rockford Files, Streets of San Francisco. And actually, I think I saw recently, he was a guest on a recent episode of Streets of San Francisco. But he's just been all over the place. Very popular personality. And also, Stephen Keep Mills is in this episode, and I believe this is the first time we're seeing him in the series. Episode 2 is titled Farley, the People's Choice. With Flo's unintentional help, Farley is elected zoning commissioner. Much to his disappointment, it's not all it's cracked up to be. We have Stephen Keep Mills appearing again as Les Kincaid, but we have one other person in this episode, no character name given, but this person is played by Randall Carver, who was on, I believe, the first season of Taxi, John Burns.
Yes. And Mike, you actually got the Taxi box set, I think, yesterday or today.
It was yesterday, and I got it at the insistence of you. Now, you were the one who said, ooh, the Taxi box set is on Amazon for $21. And I'm sort of battling internally, do I need another DVD set to maybe just sit around and gather dust? And I said, at that price, you know what? That's like $4 a season. I'm going for it. And yeah, it arrived yesterday. It's got 17 discs in it. This was like the biggest DVD set I've ever seen, the thickest. It was humongous. And actually, another little thing I noticed is I'm going to have to somehow find more sleeves or more binders for DVDs because I filled up all my binders. I can't really get more than maybe one or two more DVD sets because I'm not going to have a place to store them. Such is life.
Well, hold on a second, Mike. I'm going to recommend one Taxi episode for you. Season 2, episode 14, Reverend Jim gets a hoss.
Okay, I'm sold for any episode that has Reverend Jim as the central character.
Yes.
I may have to pull that up tonight. Another thing to note is that Randall Carver is actually married to Shelley Herman. Herself, she was a page at NBC back in the 70s and 80s. Very well known and actually pretty good friends with a number of people in our community. Very good person. Did a lot of page work and behind-the-scenes stuff in the 70s, 80s, even up till today. So hello, friend of a friend, Shelley Herman. Episode 3 is titled Bull is Back in Town. When Bull, a wild and crazy miner, comes to town on his annual binge, seeking a good drink, a bath, and a pretty woman, he goes wild for Flo. She is single, so I would assume that she is definitely eligible. I don't remember her ever having any sort of significant other on Alice or on Flo. So go for it. And Bull himself was played by G.W. Bailey. Lieutenant Harris or Captain Harris, depending on when you're watching, in the Police Academy series.
And of course, let's not forget, Police Academy 4 Citizens on Patrol, one of the greatest movies ever made.
He was in 2 of the greatest movies to ever come out of the 80s. Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol, and the feel-good film of 1987, Mannequin.
And let's not forget, he was also in Short Circuit.
You mean the feel-good movie of 1986?
Oh, yeah.
All about Johnny Five in these parts. Episode 4 of Season 2 is titled A Castleberry Thanksgiving, Part 1. Boy, I wonder what Episode 5 is going to be. Let's find out after we go through this. Flo gathers the Castleberry family together for the first time in 25 years, and they are all in for a big surprise. Forrest Tucker guest stars as Jarvis Castleberry. Well, there goes that. Playing Jarvis Castleberry in this episode, hey, I just mentioned it, Forrest Tucker. We talked about him in The Ghostbusters, but in addition, he was also on F Troop, but he's been around, and according to Gilbert Gottfried, he has some very legendary genitalia.
Whoa, gee.
It's not like, they're throwing orange wedges at his butt like Cesar Romero.
Oh, no.
Just a little girthy. That's all I'm saying. Maybe more than a little girthy. Well, guess what? Episode 5, shocker, A Castleberry Thanksgiving, Part 2. Flo brings her father, Jarvis Castleberry, back into the family fold after a 25-year absence. And actually, both of these episodes were directed by Dick Martin. Episode 6 is titled Willoughby vs. Willoughby. Miriam wins a Yellow Rose lottery to accompany Flo on a free trip to Disney World, provided she can leave her husband and kids.
Because this would be around the time where Disney World would be celebrating its, as you can hear my eye roll here, tencennial.
Which is not a word according to Mike.
It's not a word according to Mike. It's not a word, period.
No.
Yeah, you could say celebrating a decade of existence, celebrating 10 years. There's no such thing as a tencennial.
Now, what year would this episode have aired, Mike?
This was December 1st of 1980, and Disney World, I believe, opened in 71. So, yeah, just before the 10th anniversary. You thought I was going to say that word. No. Episode 7 is titled So Long Shorty. Funeral services held at Flo's Yellow Rose eulogize the wrong man. What? You eulogize the wrong man?
How does that happen, Mike? How does that happen?
That's my question. How do you eulogize the wrong dead person?
I have questions.
I think we all do. That is a little bizarre. However, what's not bizarre is some of the people on this episode, people we've talked about in the past. Playing Ogilvy in this episode is Alan Oppenheimer, Skeletor. I think that's the main place that we know him from, but he's done so much more than that. But also we have the mayor, presumably the mayor of Cowtown in this episode, Mayor Bascombe, and he's played by Richard Stahl. We did talk about Richard Stahl in the past, because he played a rabbi on 2 episodes of Love, Sidney. Additionally, he was on 5 of the 6 episodes of Turnabout. I feel dirty just saying Turnabout. He was also on an episode of Blansky's Beauties. And he was on That's My Mama for 1 episode. No, don't say anything about Hall of Fame. He's got good credentials, but I don't think he has enough to back it up, though.
He doesn't have the resume of Bill Knuckles.
Hey, Bill Knuckles has been on 2 shows, and each of them was an entry. I think he deserves something for accuracy. If you batted 1,000 for your career, albeit on 2 at-bats, that's worth recognition. I'm just saying.
If Moonlight Graham had 2 at-bats and gotten 2 hits, guaranteed Hall of Famer.
Exactly. If Anthony Rendon went 2 for 2 for the Angels, and that's all he did that season, he'd be in. No, he's still a bum.
Yeah, he's no Joey Gallo. Now, Joey Gallo, at least he actually hits home runs.
But does Joey Gallo have a team? No. I'm just saying, he's not employed for next season just yet.
Yet, that's the key word.
It's early. There's still 3 months till spring training, essentially.
Hey, who knows? By the time you listen to this, maybe Juan Soto has finally found a team.
Hey, who's going to sign first, Juan Soto or Joey Gallo? As surely you've heard, Juan Soto did sign with the Mets. Joey Gallo's still out there, though. Episode 8 is titled Deserted Islands. When Randy leaves home, Flo invites him to stay in the back room of the Yellow Rose for a day or two while he practices his singing. She soon regrets it. He's a little pitchy dog. Episode 9 is titled The Miracle of Casa de Huevos. The Miracle of the Egg House? Okay. Flo is disappointed at not attending the annual Snowflake Ball on Christmas Eve, but gets a bigger thrill on Christmas morning. She's going to the House of Eggs, guys!
I had a bad joke involving tickets to Greece, an egg apron, and a trad wife.
But enough about Chico's last Saturday night. Episode 10 is titled Gray Escape. Mama runs away from home when Flo and Fran decide that she should lead a more productive life. And we actually have a name in this episode. Playing Mr. Beckman is Leonard Stone. And I know we've talked about him in the past. Maybe not on a TV show, but you would best know him as Mr. Beauregard in the 1971, the original movie, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
With Sam B, it's a guarantee.
We did talk about him because, oh, Greg, I can't wait to hear your excitement over this one. He was on an episode of 18 Wheels of Justice.
Yeah, that's right.
I knew you'd be so excited about that.
I hope he shared a scene with G. Gordon Liddy.
You know he had to have.
Now I'm wishing that G. Gordon Liddy had, been working with Richard Nixon to find golden tickets.
Oh, Lord.
Now, let's remember, in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, apparently in 1971, there were a lot of slow news days before Watergate, because this was the only freaking story on the news.
Man was still going to the moon. Don't tell me that was not newsworthy back in 1970, 71.
But I gotta say, that news reporter, he had some sweet hair.
Chico, save us.
Okay, so we have another name playing Mr. Gomez, James Victor, known more for the new Zorro and less for Kondo.
Episode 11 is titled Pretty Baby. Flo's dream of being crowned Miss Rodeo Days is almost spoiled by a 7-month-old baby. Damn kids. No guests of note in that episode, besides Stephen Keep Mills again. So we'll just head over to episode 12, which is titled Not With My Sister You Don't. Flo gets her ABCs mixed up when she tries to alphabetize men to protect little sister Fran. I don't even know how to interpret that. Okay, alphabetize men. Boy, all you Zebediahs are fucked over. Next up, episode 13, which is titled The Price of Avocados, Part 1. And people are worried about eggs in 2024. Ha! When Flo can't pay her rent, Farley threatens to take her trailer, but somebody beats him to it. Next up is episode 14, and this is part 2 of The Price of Avocados. When it looks like Flo has lost her money and her trailer in a get-rich-quick scheme, her friends make her a winner. So, yay, you're not losing your money and your trailer or something like that. Hooray! Episode 15 is titled Welcome to the Club. Flo fights her way into the local women's club and teaches its top member how to be a female. Going on to episode 16, the title of which is Gunsmoke at the Yellow Rose. Flo fantasizes the Yellow Rose as a roaring saloon in the 1880s. So this is a dream sequence episode. And there's no new guests of note, so that's going to take us to episode 17, titled What Are Friends For? Flo's former boss stops in to see her at the Yellow Rose and gives her some unwelcome advice on how to run a business. And when we're talking about Flo's former boss, we're talking about Mel. Vic Tayback is in this episode.
Oh, good. Oh, honestly, you know what Disney movie Vic Tayback was in?
Shaggy Dog.
Yeah, he was in the Shaggy DA. You were in that ballpark.
Okay.
And he shared a scene with Keenan Wynn.
Which around these parts gets you automatic Hall of Fame status.
Oh, it does.
just earlier this week, I don't remember which show it was on, but Vic Tayback, I think it was canon. I think it was actually a season 1 episode of canon. He played a baddie in that episode.
Oh, no.
And the funny thing is, I'm looking at IMDb, and I can't find him in canon. Unless he was... No, it wasn't Streets of San Francisco. I don't think it was that. I thought it was canon.
Well, whatever show it was on, I'm sure his presence gave it 5 cannons.
Oh, no, here it is. The way IMDb has it arranged is the latest he was on an episode, the higher up it is. So he was on episodes in 1971 and 73 and 75. So, yeah, episode 6 in season 1, he played a baddie in that episode. And that just aired, I think, like Monday of this week. First season canon. Gotta love it. And the thing is, he wasn't even credited. It wasn't, the open of canon and they say guest starring Vic Tayback. No. He was not big at this point, so he was relegated to the end of episode credits.
Now, guys, I do have some breaking news here.
This is CNN breaking news.
Now, the Mets have signed somebody, but it's not who you think.
Okay, it's not Juan Soto, so who is it?
They signed somebody from the Yankees. They signed Clay Holmes.
They can have him.
That's not really surprising. Clay Holmes, he had a really bad second half of the year. But it's not Juan Soto, so who gives a you-know-what? Episode 18 is titled, Just What the Doctor Ordered. Flo gets tonsillitis and can't talk, and Earl discovers her age through her birth certificate. He figures he's got her where he wants her until Flo shows him how an old pro plays that game. So she's got tonsillitis and can't talk. So what does she say here? Does she say, kiss my grits? Hey, playing Mrs. Carlin in this episode, this is somebody we've definitely talked about in the past, Kay Callan. If we were to talk about everything Kay Callan's been in, we'd be here for quite a bit of time. We talked about Kay Callan in Rags to Riches and Mr. President and E/R. Oh, and we talked about her on Fish for 2 episodes. So that's 5. Episode 19, we're almost there. There's 23 in season 2, so we're 4 away from the end. Episode 19 is Footsie. Oh, I think this is a play on words of a very popular film in 1981, Footsie.
Hey, guys, I got something. You know what Vic Dunlap would have said when he pronounced the title of this episode? What was the title of this again, Mike?
Footsie. And I wanted to make a joke just like this, but I had some self-restraint. Let me just say that.
Footsie!
When Earl decides to play a game with Flo and a former girlfriend, BJ, he finds out he's in over his head.
Wait, the former girlfriend's name was what? What did you say it was?
Huh?
What did you say the former girlfriend's name was?
BJ.
Yeah!
So Footsie and BJ. They're just like filling out the whole quota of fetishes this episode. Let's get away from the fetishes because... Yeah, let's just get away from the fetishes. We do have a name in this episode playing Billy June. Oh, BJ, Billy June. Craig, there you go.
Oh.
Get your mind out of the gutter. It's Billy June, played by Joanna Cassidy.
Yes.
So there, we turned a potential negative into 2 positives. We gave the full name, and it's Joanna Cassidy.
Yeah. I loved Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Guys, I'm looking at Joanna Cassidy's IMDb. They remade Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead.
Yeah, I did know they made that. It's BS. No Keith Coogan in that one.
There was actually a desire for a remake of that movie.
Apparently. Listen, if I want to watch a remake of a movie that has the word babysitting with Keith Coogan in it, I'll watch the remake of Adventures in Babysitting because Sabrina Carpenter's in that.
I fully support that motion. Adventures of Babysitting. Underrated. Just saying.
Wait, the original or the Disney Channel remake?
The original, but I
The
did
original, yeah.
But I did mention Sabrina Carpenter was in the Disney Channel remake, so at least that one has something going for it.
Episode 20 is titled "You Gotta Have Hoyt." Not "You Gotta Have Heart." You gotta have Hoyt. So, as I said earlier, the theme song was done by Hoyt Axton. Guess who appears in this episode? You gotta have Hoyt. When Hoyt Axton hits town and visits the Yellow Rose and Flo, he's just in time to get into one of the best fights the saloon ever witnessed.
Yeah, and you don't mess with Billy's dad from Gremlins.
It's all about the fights. I mean, we had earlier a fight back in season 1 with that 6'8" guy. Yeah, there's a lot of fighting going on. Episode 21 is titled "Flo's Encounter of the Third Kind." Oh my gosh, we're doing another episode based on a film title. Okay, Flo's Encounter of the Third Kind. I can't wait to read this one. When Flo claims she saw a flying saucer in the desert, she takes the skeptical Earl and Les back there to camp out and wait for the UFO to return. I don't even know what to say about that.
Could you imagine if the UFO turned out to be the TARDIS from Doctor Who, and that's the UFO they saw? Unfortunately, I don't think they had the money to afford Peter Davison.
I know this is 1981, but wouldn't Davison have started a little bit later in 81 as the Fifth Doctor?
I think Tom Baker's last episode was 81.
Okay, so this is a little before that time. Okay. You see, what I was going to say is, personally, I was hoping the UFO that Flo saw was the UFO from season 2, season 3, I think it was season 3 of Soap, where Burt Campbell got abducted.
Oh, yeah, that was great.
And then the alien clone came down and he stayed up there. Yeah, that was definitely Soapish, yes.
Oh, hold on a second. Didn't the alien clone of Burt bang Mary?
I think so, yes. They did have relations. What, aliens can do that type of stuff too. Moving on very swiftly to the penultimate episode, No Men's Land. When Buddy, who runs the gas station next to the Yellow Rose, tells Flo that the bathrooms in her saloon are on his land and she'll have to pay for them, Flo calls on the law of the West for justice. So the law is going to fight for a bathroom. Okay. So no guests of note in that episode. We're going to go to the final episode, which is titled The Dance. The Dance. The D-A-Y-N-C-E.
The Dance.
The Dance. D-A-Y-N-C-E.
The Dance.
That sounds a little bit better. I don't have the lungs to say that. The Dance. I want to see Rant.
And I've been fighting the after effects of a cold for the last month.
I still want to see Rent. When Flo makes Earl her escort to the formal ball, marking her membership into an exclusive club, he helps her make a big impression. But not the kind she wanted to make. There is one character I want to mention, not a big name. Playing Mr. Barker in this episode is Herb Voland. The main reason I mention him is this is a posthumous role for him. This episode aired on June 30th of 1981, and Herb Voland passed away on April 26th of 1981. And if you need any sort of reference as to Herb Voland is, not a very popular actor, but he was Air Controller Macias in Airplane. So that's 29 episodes. I'd almost say what happened, but yeah, I think we need to take a look at the schedule to see what happened, because apparently it may have run up against some tough competition. Flo moved all over the place in the 80-81 season. To start, it aired on Mondays at 8 p.m. So same night it was on first season, but now instead of 9:30, it's on at 8. The competition, this is like the Ropers, where we talked about taking a good show and moving into like a really tough time slot. That's what happened here. It went up against the first half hour of That's Incredible, but also on NBC, it went up against the first half hour of Little House on the Prairie. Sorry, 1980, you're not beating That's Incredible, and you're not beating Little House on the Prairie. So it moved. And this is going to be real fun because it moved 4 times in the course of this second season. The first move was to Saturday nights at 9 p.m. This night wasn't a good night. The first show was good. WTRP in Cincinnati. Good show. From there, I got some trepidation. 8:30 p.m. was the Tim Conaway show. We previously talked about that. Then at 9 was Flo. Then Ladies Man, not that Ladies Man, another Ladies Man at 9:30. And then Concrete Cowboys, which I think we've mentioned in the past, was on at 10. The competition there on NBC, it can beat this probably. The Gangster Chronicles, the first half hour. But on ABC in 1980, you're not beating the first half hour of The Love Boat. Not beating the 5th ranked show in all of television that year. So in the spring of 1981, Flo moved to 8:30 on Saturdays. So it gets away from the Love Boat slot. And Concrete Cowboys actually moves up an hour to 9, and then you have a show called Riker airing at 10. On NBC, I think you're beating this. Not 100% sure, but I think you're going to be competitive with Barbara Mandrell and the Mandrell sisters. I know they were a big thing in the early 80s, but I think you can beat them the second half hour of that show. But on ABC, I don't think you're beating the second half hour of 8 is Enough. And I know 8 is Enough is ending right around this time, 1981. But hey, that's the 3rd time slot. There's a 4th time slot, believe it or not. For summer of 1981, it moved to Tuesday nights at 8:30. They're really trying to save this show. Problem is, again, I think you've got maybe a little bit of a two-headed monster here. On NBC, it went up against the second half hour of, I can't believe I'm saying this. Well, actually, I am saying it in a sense. It aired against the second half hour of Lobo, which was the renamed version of The Misadventures of Sheriff Lobo.
I miss Sheriff Lobo.
Don't we all? But on ABC, you're not beating Laverne and Shirley.
Nope.
So, yeah, that's the story of Flo. It was good in that first season, but as what typically happens, you move a good show around, people stop watching it. You move a show around and you have competition on the other networks that's really good, you're definitely not watching it. And then you hopscotch it all over the place. You go from Mondays to Saturdays to Tuesdays, and you have 4 time slots in the span of one season. You're not going to come back. And that happened to be the case with this show. I don't have ratings for this show primarily because if you do a search for Flo, you get everybody and their mother named Flo. And I'm not sifting through 1,650 results to try and find any sort of ratings.
Flo was released on DVD in its entirety, thanks to the fine folks at Order Archive. But if you cannot bother yourself with physical media, it is available to stream for a small price.
Or you could just buy the DVD, rip it, and stream it yourself on Plex, provided you have a Plex Pass.
See, that's easy for Greg to say because he's got one.
I paid $90 for a lifetime Plex Pass during Black Friday.
Money well spent.
Your mileage may vary on that. Actually, I do have a week of ratings real fast that I found. And this would have been from early February of 1981. Out of 64 shows, Flo came in at 56. That's not good. And taking a look at shows, non-movies, non-specials, the only shows that it beat At 59 was I'm a big girl now. And yes, I am a big girl now. Thank you for asking. 60, and we've talked about this in the past, problems that Hill Street Blues had early on in terms of ratings. And then at 62 was Nero Wolf, and 63 was Ladies Man, the aforementioned Ladies Man. The rest of the stuff that was on that week was television movies, reports, special programming. When you look at it, during sweeps, if you're rated 56th out of 64 shows, basically in the bottom 15%, sorry, you're not going to see another season. And even in spite of those great ratings from the first season, it just didn't get carried over from season 2. I'm guessing because of the time slot move, it went from 9:30 to 8, and maybe you're losing some people there, but certainly moving it to 4 different time slots in one season, that's never a good sign. So in the end, Flo, just like Angie, just like the Ropers, had a fabulous start that first season. Highly rated. People were watching it. But just like those shows, it gets moved around a little bit. Viewership just absolutely bottoms out. And unfortunately, what could have been a good spinoff just became a thing on TV.
You can find us at our website, itwasathingontv.com, on Facebook at It Was a Thing on TV podcast, and elsewhere at It Was a Thing on TV. You can find us on any podcast player, and we're also on YouTube, where you can subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with our releases, including what's coming up next time.
Monday the 16th on the podcast, we are going to talk about one of the absolute worst shows in television history. If you listen to the critics, if you listen to TV Guide, we're going to go into some uncharted territory. We've talked about bad shows. I don't think we've gone into many shows that have been universally panned. This is universally panned, and it's been panned for the better part of 6 decades now. It sounds like a good idea in theory. Something must have gotten screwed up in the actual creation of the show. Or maybe just the premise was that stupid. I mean, it is a stupid premise, but it's a mid-60s comedy. You almost get used to stupid premises at that point. Apologies to Gilligan's Island. Apologies to some of the other dopey shows from the mid-60s. How bad is it? What are we talking about? You're going to have to come back on 16th for the next episode of It Was a Thing on TV. Thank you again for listening. Please stay safe. Please stay warm if your weather's getting really cold, because we want to see you right here on Monday for that clunker of an episode.
Wow! Kiss my grits!
Man, I thought Polly Holiday was on our Skype chat.
You'd think that, wouldn't you, Mike?
Wait, Johnny, what are you doing here?
You know that I loved vlogs so much, guys. Of course I'd be here.
I did not know that. You liked Flo?
Of course I did, Mike. We were both on CBS in the 80s.
Oh, valid point. I just don't remember Polly Holiday coming on Price is Right to promote Flo.
I know, it's a shame too, Mike.
You know, I think it would have been great if somehow, and this doesn't line up in the whole timeline of Price is Right, but I'd love it if Polly Holiday came on The Price is Right in 1980 to promote Flo by being in a showcase with the Johnny Olsen robot running a marathon as Boy George.
With me singing Karma Chameleon.
Can you do a line of Karma Chameleon right here?
Of course I can, Mike. Come, chameleon. Come and go. You come and go.
That brings a tear to my eye. Because it's so damn crappy.
I don't know what you guys are smoking, but can I have some?